we're actually taking in a lot of the browser's natural rendering mechanisms and inserting it your own. So, I mean, yeah, its performance is good, all of that, but the user experience is not as good as the server does. How do you actually resolve this problem?
So I can take that. We can do mixed here, which is you click next, you make an AJAX call, you get the contents of the whole page, the second page rendered on the server, but you get it as an HTML blob and you dump it. But then you also use push state to update the URL there, so that if you click back, then you notice a push state change event, and then based on that URL you can react, make another call and get the data, or you can even do caching of the top node. So you can do
the caching case works in only some browsers. The replay is still not as smooth as the server-side case.
When I said caching in JavaScript memory, so you just take the whole node.
Still have a chunky.
Yeah.
It's not smooth.
I mean,
sorry, can I add one thing? Also, if you send that URL, if you want to save that or send it to somebody else.
Yeah, that's another point.
And that works for pages which are meant to be cacheable. So if there is a no cache set on that page, the push state will, even if you think a graph and over there, will make a new call. It's not going to take it from there. So for a page like search, you can't have it cacheable, right? So you can find it.
So we have plenty of gifts, so whoever is going to ask questions, they're going to get gifts. So think of the question.
So I agree to the point that native apps, right? So it's okay, client side is perfectly fine. When it comes to browser data, so do you at some point think that the business logic of the company gets exposed to everyone?
Okay, so to define business logic, I don't believe code is
so
like.
In a page like say eBay search, a particular item is shown bolder and not shown bolder based on a condition. And if you're giving that condition in blind test, do you think that it's exposed to everyone? Is it okay to expose or do you have a way?
Yeah, so sort of my philosophy is like I don't necessarily believe that there's anything magical in the code that we write. Like anybody can write it, it's just code. It's actually all of the systems combined working together and all the people that built it and all the designs and all of those things together that make up the magic of whatever company you're at. And so even if the person can see it, whether you sent it down in like a structured JSON format or a structured XML format or an HTML, which is just an XML format, if I can parse the XML, I can parse the HTML, I can scrape it. Like I'm not sure you're hiding it anymore, right? If I know it's going to be bold, then I can look at the screen and be like, oh, okay, I look for the things that have the CSS style bold.
Yeah, if you have a template that makes the decision of not showing bold and showing bold, or decision of showing a logo over there, decision of showing a star for a top rated seller, and that decision logic is in JavaScript, which is readable by everyone.
I don't know if that's really I'm not sure what the issue is with that.
I'm just asking, just bringing in a business logic into the client side, is it okay?
From my point of view, I guess even from LinkedIn's point of view, bringing down that, hey, this person has a premium account or doesn't have a premium account and deciding to show a yellow button or a blue button I don't think is a big deal, because no matter what they do in the browser on that side, they can't change that they don't have a premium account. Like, they have to still pay, right? So I think exposing data and manipulating the UI based on the data doesn't really expose us to sort of like some sort of internal knowledge. And even then, for that set of data, somebody has to have been authenticated. So it's literally their data. Like, I'm giving them their data to look at. So maybe for like the...
I think you're talking about presentation logic and he's talking about business logic. Business logic is like, I have cheated on so many things, are you going to put, you have cheated on so many things in there? No. I think you're talking about just show height or whatever, right? And he's talking about
it's not just binary show height, right? There is a function that is involved in doing the templating.
Right, but you're not going to send
exposing that function over there.
I think for that's a classic use case in LinkedIn too. For instance, I don't know if Mentor will speak about that, but I think we do make money in LinkedIn by hiding some of the last names. right? I mean, LinkedIn profile kind of does that because of the premium non-premium thing. Well, so that's a good question. I mean, as I said, as we had this on the day 2 of telling people to use client templates, saying that, you know, in JSpeech or something like that, they could do this on the view, right? That was our biggest worry, is to not do this kind of logic on the view. A lot of this business logic was in the views. I mean, that kind of defeats the whole purpose of tomorrow. We went through, I think, changing thousands of views when we had to actually support a new change in that business logic. Because everybody did that in those views. Well, I mean, that's the truth. I mean, we did that. Now this kind of stuff forces you to actually do that in one place in your business logic layer itself, and then send something to the client that actually doesn't do that logic. Show it or don't show it. Why should you write an if block around in your template that says if premium and A and B and C and then, you know, falls in this bucket to do that? I would see the other side of this as, you know, it could be a problem in some cases, as you said, but you can turn it around and make it a good practice to actually make your services that do this much cleaner and actually push all of that back into a service where it's supposed to be.
Actually, I think the way she's saying it is really good from an MVC standpoint. You really want your model on the back end to be the thing that's doing the business logic, not your behavior scene. So, in theory, I think maybe that's what I was sort of missing the point. Is like whatever your data API is that you're talking to, it's got the business logic behind it. It's the model.
So send a Boolean and then that's it. I mean, you don't have to kind of do that logic there. And second, as I talked about maintainability, when you grow big and then actually do, and then suddenly we want to support a new rule for a particular premium user, it's much easier done in this way, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, we take your question. I think.
This is a very friendly debate, which is nice to have, you know. Okay, but I have a question. In 5 or 10 years, okay, I'm talking about this is right now where you're talking about at this moment, with templates and all kinds of things, applications I work with and different things and so on. Okay, what do you see going on, and you folks are pretty knowledgeable in that, what do you feel in the next 5 to 10 years, where are we going?
I'll start. I think that's a really good question. I think in a perfect world, templating wouldn't even be involved so much, or it wouldn't be as big of an issue. It would be so if you look at most like Windows applications or any native application, they have this concept of a view hierarchy that has conflict, has components that render themselves, and that's what you work with. So going back to kind of what I mentioned at the start, where the DOM should you should really extend the DOM to have richer things. And so one of the drafts out there is the web components draft. And so the idea there is that you have a richer set of DOM types, primitives to work with. So I think that's where we need to get, so that the templating doesn't have to do all the. It's not as you have to do more of the translating to the actual DOM on the client side, but it's done in a much nicer way. So maybe that's.
So that's the
is working on that right now.
Yeah, I think Google is pushing that really hard. I'm not extremely happy with it. That's my personal opinion, but it's in the right direction. I think I'll say that.
Throwing other features out there, the quasi-literals in ECMAScript 6, there's templating moved down closer to the metal in the browser rather than
right.
Interpreted JavaScript, right?
I think, Doug, Crawford has a opinion on that because it's making decisions and at the really low level, and it's kind of forcing everyone down. It's like, it's less open. I don't know. So I kind of agree with Doug on that one. Browsers probably shouldn't be going that route, or JavaScript shouldn't be built into the JavaScript language.
So it's coming. So I actually come mostly from a native development side, and these view hierarchies and these widget toolkits have been around forever. And the web is trying to build these widget toolkits and sort of bring them up and make them part of the browser set. And it's kind of weird because everybody who has those widget toolkits in native development, they don't use them. They custom draw everything. And so I actually think the sort of like amazing thing would be if the designer could draw in Photoshop, and then I don't know what the hell happens. It exports it into something that is renderable in whatever freaking device it's going to run in, and I can stop talking about templating completely. Would be sort of my ideal. So I think even if we get higher level components, even if we have extensible higher level components, the way that companies separate themselves is by their branding and differentiation. So they will take whatever you give them and modify the crap out of it. That's how we separate ourselves. And so I think that it's going to be interesting, but I hope that in 5 to 10 years that development of user experiences is just point and click, like everything else is.
So we're going to wrap it up in a couple of minutes. So if you have any...
One more question. Quick question about client-side validation. So like you have a form, and so some things are really simple, like this needs to be a number, this should be currency. But what about things that there's interdependency between fields, or you're going to do lookups, things like that? How do you balance between just push it down the template and say this is a number, or push it down and say all these things are interconnected?
So I can answer from my side. I mean, generally in a classic MVC model, you want the model to do most of the validation. And you really want the view and the controller for things that are effectively optimized so that the user doesn't have to do the round trip. So I don't think we have a model where the client side really does, it does things like, okay, you didn't go over 30 characters, you have a limit on the field and stuff like that. But at some point, you're going to have to do model validation, like is this username already registered, whatever that hits the database. So I think we push it to the client for single field stuff, and sometimes if it's grouping of fields, we kind of look at it, but then we always end up having to revalidate in the model in the back end so that we can guarantee.
I don't think there is any doing away from validating on the model and so on. You just you shouldn't be relying on client to do pure validation. It's as far as models goes, it's something that that's your source of truth as far as your backend systems are concerned, and you need to make sure that is the source of truth that you want to deal with. You just cannot assume something coming from the client to be what you want. So there is no way going around that, and I don't think any technology to come is going to mitigate that in any which way, to the point where if you're controlling both systems, maybe, but I don't think it's going to be any possible at all.
Cool. Any more questions? Anyone last?
No.
Okay, go ahead. Oh,
imagine a web application which is heavily involved with overlays, tooltips, and a lot of widgets and modules which are hidden when the page first gets loaded. And do you guys load all the templates when the page gets loaded, or you wait for the page to get loaded and you fire an AJAX call to load all the templates, or you just wait for the module to get called and then you do an AJAX call for the first time to load the template? So what's the best practice to load all these templates? Because for some pages it might be very load of HTML.
I would say it depends. It all depends. What's the likelihood that the user will even click on something? And you can use that to base your decision off of. But you could do it, I mean, I think doing it lazily on demand is a completely valid solution if it's not likely to be used. If you know for sure that the user, like when they click that final button, they're going to have to see some overlay, you don't want them having to wait on that. So at that point, I would definitely have that pre-cached and ready to go.
So you can use the about the form, below the form as sometimes a metric too. Stuff that's below the fold. I mean, really, you want to download every single action that's going to be done. That's the chance of anyone scrolling, unless you're scrolling your own page.
There's some actions like you gotta open this overlay and then click on something to see that template. We really need to load everything in the beginning, or load it as we need it. So you might get trouble in the beginning, but it gets loaded.
I can speak for mail, and I know Senthil worked on something that we talked about. The idea there is you know what your application needs up front, and based on whatever data that you collect, based on usage patterns, all of that, you can predict what the user needs. I mean, speaking primarily in mail, you know that the user is probably going to look at the inbox. So it makes sense to bring everything that you need for an inbox. But what we also determined is there are certain components that you bring a little later. So now the decision is, as you said, do you want to do it on demand, or do you want to do it a little more smart, saying what Senthil did was, when he was in mail, of course, was when, if browser is idle at any point in time, and you know that there is a mail, user is reading through an email, you have that time that you can bring in stuff without the user knowing it, priming your cache for things that could happen little later. that is one way. The second way, which we are exploring right now, is to see how many. You brought a point of tooltips. Let's say I want to delete something. The subsequent action of a delete is very possible the moment you mouse over anywhere in the region around that button. So you can make much more informed decisions on saying that if the user was to hover somewhere around the toolbar, you probably want to bring in the most commonly used actions in the toolbar right up front.
So you find an Ajax call to
It doesn't matter if it's Ajax or if you're just doing even something off the CDN, but what I'm saying is the decision to bring in something is at that point, and those decisions are primarily based on your application's need and what you have built into the architecture.
Plus it can personalize, right? You know this guy's going to click this part, show him up front. There's no limit, but you can personalize the hell out of this.
So I hate that word personalization. it drives me nuts.
Where do you store all these templates? Do you store in a DOM or in a local cache or local storage? Where do you guys usually store the templates?
In Mail, we don't do local storage so far. We do JS cache. In my previous projects in Maps, I was working on Yahoo Maps as well. And one of the things we did was, when there are reusable templates, instead of getting a rendered piece of the template as well as an additional non-rendered template which you can bind data on the client, we tried to, based on the rendered template, we once picked it back from the DOM, cleaned up the data, and now preserved it. That way, the routine to actually clean up the DOM is very, very trivial. Once you do an inner HTML, cleaning it out is very easy. So we tried various methods. You could choose any one of them.
So we'll wrap it up with one last question. So I think Sandeep has a question, so we'll wrap it up with that. So go ahead, Sandeep.
Are you guys finding any utility in WebSockets with HTML5 and any would that have any impact with the client side templating? Would it help, or people would go with the other choice because now you can push and more regular people?
I'm not sure I have any experience with it, so.
Any of you using WebSockets in any of your projects?
Are you guys investing into looking at it as a possible futuristic technology?
On the mobile side of LinkedIn, we are definitely. So the biggest actual cost on mobile is not total number of bytes sent. It's actually establishing the HTTP connection up, and so establishing a single connection and then utilizing it. I mean, connection pooling sort of gives that for you, but utilizing it to actually send the stuff back and forth without the HTTP overhead is something that we're looking at. We are also looking at sort of the live update model, but in that model, I think we're using WebSockets. I'm not sure it's really templating related. We're looking more at a ping and pull model. So the WebSocket's open, it's told like something changed, tells you an ID or something, and then we still do standard HTTP to retrieve it. Mostly because with WebSockets, the load balancers go to all hell. And we don't want to sort of do extra queries on the back end to gather the data in order to send it down the ping socket. So usually we just send down something like, this ID changed, and then we do a full pull. But I don't know if that really addresses, for us, I don't think it had any impact on the client versus server side.
In Mail, we are trying to explore, I mean, not particularly on sockets, but we're trying to explore to see if, to unblock the UI thread, we're seeing if we can offload some of the things to the worker instead. I mean, it's not answering the socket question, but we're trying to do some of that, because if there is any rich processing, like if you want to do an autocomplete, you want to do more richer autocomplete to search stuff in your email, the mails that you've cached on the client and all of that. So those things we're trying to offload to the worker just so that we don't block the UI thread. It's just as it goes back to a responsive design kind of work that we're doing.
Kind of related, I feel like evented server, like, kind of like Netty or like Node kind of helps with client rendering too, because you could do more than something like Tomcat, which doesn't give you async. I'm not exactly sure how it all, I did not measure anything, but I think it's much more flexible having an evented server like, like Node or Netty do the, so you can balance things that on the client and stream certain things out as you've started to get data back from the server. I'm not saying that's like a valid thing, but it would help.
Great. Thank you so much for you guys for joining. I'm going to ask questions, so I got some tips for you. So come and pick it up. I would like to thank all of you for coming by here. This is a great debate.
Yeah, I think I got a chance to talk to you. I'm so much more here than in my own community. So thanks for that.
So we will be around hanging out. We have hopefully more beer, food. So hang around.